And yet, in all of those times, all that really happened to me was I broke an ankle once. No brag, just fact. That was a line from a show way back in the dark ages by a man by the name of Walter Brennan. He was the real McCoy, but that wasn't everybody. But he was in a show called The Guns of Will Sonnet, and he used that line a lot. No brag, just fact. And that's a lot about my life. You see, God had a plan for my life, and he kept me going. And my telling you my story encourages me, and I hope it will encourage you. I was born at a very early age with a twisted mind. Yeah, Steve knows me. A twisted mind that, well, to give you an example, I can be having a conversation with somebody or listening to somebody else, and when I hear a subject, my mind automatically goes into search mode, and I can remember a joke or even make up a joke about that subject, just like that, almost all the time. Twisted, yeah. And with this twisted mind, I have memories, vivid memories of things that happened in my life when I was 2 and 3 years old. Don't ask me why. I mean, they're crazy memories, but I can remember them. One of the things I remember growing up when I was real small in our church, it was a small church because where my great-grandfather was one of the men who started this church, my dad was one of the men who started that church. So it was pretty small. It started the year I was born. And I remember in that church there were 3 old men, 3 grandfathers. My grandfather, Rudolph Mord, Charlie Croft, and Saul Walker. And for some reason, I can still remember the favorite song of each of those 3 men. And as I was thinking about this last week, I thought, wait a minute. Those 3 old men in the church were probably in their 50s. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't remember my mom having breast cancer. Probably because it happened right when I was born. And it had an impact on my life, though, because since she was in the hospital having treatments, the treatments for breast cancer back then, they would put acid on the breast and have it eat away, and if it wasn't enough, they would do it again and do it again. But since my mom was in the hospital having these treatments, I went to live with my grandparents. James Dobson said he did a survey of little kids one time, and he asked this little girl, what is the definition of a grandmother? And she said, a grandmother is somebody who has time. That was my grandmother. She had time for my questions, time to do things with me. I vividly remember my grandmother and I walking down this path. And it's a strange memory because it's like I'm looking at someone else doing it. But we were walking down this path. I was carrying this fishing pole that she had helped me make, a stick with some string and a safety pin on the end. And we were walking down towards the creek to go fishing in a creek that didn't have fish to catch. She had time. And maybe that's why one of my key verses in my life, back in Genesis chapter 1, the first instructions that God gave to man. In verse 26, then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea. Wow, I like that verse. God said, you're supposed to go fishing. Why? I mean, why would he say rule over the fish of the sea? I don't know. But I try to do what God tells me to do, so yeah. I was raised in a God-honoring family. We went to church 3 times a week, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. If the church was open, we were there. Even though church was 25 to 30 miles away, we were there. Music has always been a very integral part of my life. When I was very little, my sisters and I were known as the Hennings Trio. When I was 12 and 13, the young people's group in our church formed a singing group, and we toured through Arkansas and Oklahoma giving concerts. When I was in high school, I helped organize a boys' trio called The Redeemed, and we went around to different churches singing. I remember singing in this church and The Redeemed because Kay Kronberg used to be Anderson, was our pianist. I'd forgotten about that till I started. A few years later, I was involved in a group called the Charity Singers, and we traveled for 25 years through several states singing. At one time, I was the choir director here. Another time, after the choir died out, I became the leader of the praise and worship team. And I vividly remember the day when I was asked to step down from being the leader of the praise and worship team. I was devastated. That wasn't my plan. And and in my mind I'm thinking, go ahead, try it without me, because it's all about me. But God had a plan. I grew up going to Bible camp. And from the ages of 7 through 23, I don't think I missed a single year except one when I was in Alaska for a summer, either as a camper or counselor or both. And the camp that I went to was Glad Tidings Bible Camp, and at that time, one of the main factors of Glad Tidings Bible Camp was memorization, scripture memorization. And I remember as a high school student going to camp, they would give us a list of 50 verses to memorize, and before the week was over, I could, without any help, any look, I could go through all 50 of those verses. Got a twisted mind. But that memorization was all about me. Look at me. Look what I can do. Aren't I something? Super Christian. Yay. I didn't apply those verses to my life. I just memorized them and bragged about it. As far as I can remember, I've always been a believer. And yet, when I was 8 years old, I was approached by someone who says, "So, do you remember when you made a decision for Christ?" And I said, "Well, not exactly, no." He says, "Well, what if you really haven't? Don't you think you should make sure?" I said, "You bet." So I did. So I could tell people, I made a decision for Christ. Look at me. Again, life was all about me. We went to this small, independent, non-denominational, very conservative Bible church. And my first 3 years of going to school were going to a little country schoolhouse in a Catholic community. My sisters and I were the only Protestants in the entire school. Wasn't a problem. Well, a little bit. One Wednesday morning, my sister went up to one of her classmates and said, "You know you got some ashes on your forehead?" And she wiped them off. We'd never heard of an Ash Wednesday service before. And after I made my decision to accept Christ as my Savior, to become a Christian, I went up to one of my little classmates and I says, "Are you a Christian?" And he says, "Yes." Wow, I was overjoyed. I had a classmate who was a Christian, so I went home and told my mom. I said, "I talked to Daryl in school today, and he said he's a Christian." And my mom says, "Well, just because you say you're a Christian doesn't always mean you're a Christian." And that statement was more profound than I realized at the time. The problem with that little church that we went to, we were known for what we didn't do, not for what we did. You see, we didn't smoke. We didn't drink. We didn't play cards. We didn't go to movies. Well, we would have films in our church, but we didn't go to a theater, where a movie was. And when I was in grade school, in elementary, our whole elementary school went up to Yankton to watch Bambi. And the 3 kids in my class stayed at school all day by ourselves because we didn't go to theaters to watch movies. We didn't go to dances, which always puzzled me because it seemed like if you put wheels under your shoes, it was all right because we went skated to music, holding hands or whatever. Yeah. Terminology. In fact, I could not be in the swing choir in high school. But by the time my brother Delwyn got in high school, they'd figured out if we changed the name of the group to Madrigal Singers, then it'd be all right. Yeah, that was fine. Same songs. Same songs. My parents were always very supportive of me growing up. If I wanted to try something, they said, go for it. And they would encourage me. And success came easy. I had this twisted mind that enjoyed figuring things out. I mean, I just loved brain teasers and riddles and, these little wooden puzzles and things like that. And it could figure out how to do things, whether it was building something or playing the trumpet. When I was a freshman, I made it on both the varsity cross country and track teams and lettered in both. Some people say, well, to make it on the varsity cross country team in Crofton, that's something to brag about. Hey, look at me. It's all about me. And so by the time I was a junior in high school, I had it all figured out. I was mapping out my plan. I really loved mathematics, and I loved running distance. So if I would go to a college where I could major in math and run on a scholarship, I wouldn't have to pay for college, and I could do what I wanted to do in life. Problem arose my senior year. The math teacher that I loved and made me love math left. And the new math teacher and I didn't think on the same level. And before the year was out, I dropped out of math. I don't think you're going to major in math in college if you didn't even take senior math in high school. But there's still music. I enjoyed music. I was pretty good in music, and I enjoyed running. So just instead of, the junior year, I'd figured out there were 7 Christian colleges, mind you, that I would get information on that I could major in math and get a scholarship. And so now without the math part, it narrowed it down to about 2 or 3, but hey, makes it easier. And when I was a senior, my dad approached me. He says, if you think you're ever going to be a farmer, I'll teach you how to plant corn. I said, don't waste your time, Dad. I am never going to be a farmer. So I had narrowed down to 2 or 3 colleges, and I had it all figured out for me as super Christian. All right, well, we're going to take a little break now. A couple more songs. Why don't you stand up and join us? Who am I that the Lord of all the earth would care to know my name, would care to feel my hurt? Who am I that the bright and morning star would choose to light my way for my ever wandering heart? Not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. I am a flower quickly fading, here today and gone tomorrow. A wave tossed in the ocean, a baby waves on the sea would follow down. Let's start that verse over again. Start the verse again. 3, 4. Who am I that the eyes that see my sin would look on me with love and watch me rise again? Who am I that the voice that calmed the sea would call out through the rain and calm the storm in me? Not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. I am a flower quickly fading, here today and gone tomorrow. A wave tossed in the ocean, a vapor in the wind. Still you hear me when I'm calling. Lord, you catch me when I'm falling, and you've told me who I am. I am yours. I am yours. You dance over me while I am unaware. You sing all around, but I never hear the sound. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed. Amazed by you, how you love me. You dance over me while I am unaware. You sing all around, but I never hear the sound. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you, how you love me. How wide, how deep, how great is your love for me. How wide, how deep, how great is your love for me. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you, how you love me. And Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you, how you love me. Did you realize he came here with you this morning? He's all around us. He's trying to talk to you if you'll just listen. Because he has that plan that he wants you to fulfill, and nobody else can fulfill it. Because he loves you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. How you love me. How wide, oh how wide, how deep, Lord, how deep, how great is your love for me. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. How you love me. Sing it one more time. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. Lord, I'm amazed by you. How you love me. You may be seated. Well, senior year started out pretty good. I made it to all-state choir. The only person in our school. Look at me. I made it as homecoming king candidate. Didn't get the top, but the kid who got it broke his leg playing football, so I mean, it was a pity thing, but yeah. District meet, cross country. I was really looking forward to this. It was the first meet that my grandma got to see me run. And it was at Wayne State College. And I loved that course because when I ran cross country, I didn't want to get confused of where to go. And if I knew the track real well, my technique was I could have used starting blocks. I mean, I sprinted out of the start, and I would get a big enough lead so by the time anybody else caught me, the race was over. When that race ended, I was 300 yards ahead of second place. And next week was state. State meet was unique, too, because that was going to be the first meet that my dad ever watched me run. Back up just a little bit. First time my mom watched me run when I was a freshman was out at Kuby's by Crofton. And that day, Coach decided to put me in the junior varsity race, and so I did. Because if you ran in the junior varsity race and your time was good enough, you would get one of the trophies from the varsity race. So I was running the junior varsity race, and I had a good lead. Man, I was ahead. You couldn't even see the next runners. And if you've been to a cross-country meet, when you finish, you go down this long chute, so it narrows you out, and you know. And so I crossed the finish line. I was going down this chute, and my mom was standing there, and she says, "Oh, don't quit." Back to the senior state cross-country meet. It was also going to be the first time my sisters ever saw me run. Because this year, instead of being in Lincoln like it always was, which was a nice course because they're out at Pioneer Park, you took off, you ran around the lake twice, and then you came up and finished. Pretty simple. Well, they decided to change things up. Senior year, it was going to be in Omaha at a golf course, lots of trees. Well, they gave us maps of what the course was going to be like, and I was studying that map because I had to figure out when you turned left and when you turned right and everything else. And the night before the meet, it started to rain. And it rained, and it rained. And then it turned to snow, and it snowed. And the whole entire golf course was covered with snow and sleet and slush. And they didn't want their golf course tore up, so they changed the course a little bit. And they just put flags up here and there. Oh, man, this was not going to be good. I couldn't take the lead because I had no idea where we were going, so I had to follow. And instead of winning the state meet and getting a scholarship offer, I got 9th place. Talk about being devastated. My folks, since they were in Omaha, decided to spend the night with my sister, so I rode home with the team in the van, got home, and it was my responsibility to do the chores, milk the cows, take care of things. Got back to school, and it had been cold and wintry there too, and when I got out to my car, it wouldn't start. So I had to walk home 3 miles. Got home, changed my clothes, went out, started doing chores, got the cows in the barn, and the electricity went off. And I got to milk the cows by myself, by hand. It was not a good day. I was devastated. Well, there's still track season, though, in the spring, and I could do well at that. Track started out pretty good. My best time throughout the year was a 4:35 in the mile. High school, school record was 4:34.6, only not even a half a second off the record. And we still had district and state to go. District meet was in Randolph. And my senior year, I also not only just ran the mile, but I started pole vaulting. That was fun. We didn't have a real good pole for me. It was a pole designed for someone who weighed 185 pounds, and I weighed 155. Yeah, I did. I think. So I couldn't get much bend out of the pole, but the week before the district meet, the school bought a new pole vaulting pole, and it was designed for a 165-pound person, and man, did that thing shoot you up like a slingshot. My personal best in the pole vault up before the district meet was 11 feet. That day, my first attempt at 11.6 cleared it, no problem. Wow, this is great. Only when I came down, I landed wrong. And I wasn't even able to run down the runway for another attempt. And I got 4th place in the pole vault. And back then, if you finished in the top 3, you went to state. And I had hurt myself in such a way that when I ran the mile, I got 4th place in the mile. Didn't get to go to state. I wasn't going to get a scholarship for track and cross country. Devastated. Well, my options were diminishing. Now math was gone, track and cross country was gone. I'm down to music. And the guidance counselor we had back then wasn't a real top-of-the-line guidance counselor. We had a great one when I was a freshman and sophomore. By the time I was a junior, we got a new guidance counselor. And, you know, I was never in the office with a guidance counselor once to talk about scholarships or schools or anything. So I made my decision. I was going to go down to Grace College in Omaha. I could major in music, and I could become a music director in a college or high school someday. Went down and tried out for the band, made it in the band, only the director says, yeah, you're a good trumpet player, but I really need a French horn player. Could you play French horn for me? If you're a trumpet player, you're not going to play a French horn. Let me just tell you, that's just out of the question. Fortunately, I had a very good friend going at Grace who I had run with in high school. They were from Creighton. I was from Crofton. But he was the first chair, first trumpet, and he talked to the band director, Mr. Frazane, and he says, Kurt needs to play trumpet. And so I got to play second chair, first trumpet. Wow, that was fun. The band, when they were going to go on tour, formed a small singing ensemble that would sing also in the concerts. And so I thought, well, I'll just try out for that. That should be good. Didn't make it. I wasn't good enough. And they didn't have track or cross country. I actually started cross country while I was down there, got the coach, the basketball coach talked into it. And by the time my brother went, they had a great team. My brother won the meets all over the country going to that. Yeah. But being in a music major, I had to take something called music theory. I couldn't even play the piano. I didn't know what music theory was. And when I got pretty much through that class, I still didn't know what music theory was. Augmenteds and diminished and fifths and fourths. And one of the requirements of music theory was to compose a song. So I had to take piano lessons to learn how to play a piano so I could compose a song, which, since you took piano lessons, you had to play in a recital. Whoa, it's going downhill fast. By the time I finished my freshman year in college, I had heard from a friend of mine in Alaska that if I wanted, I could come up there and work for him. So I talked to my best friend in college, and we took off driving for Alaska, and we got up there on an adventure going to make big bucks. But the type of work I did, you had to do outside, and for the last month it rained, and it rained, and it rained, and after 3 months we came home. I had made enough money to buy a guitar and barely make it back home. And I wasn't going to borrow money to go to college. So I got me a job in a warehouse, worked there for about 2 months, and looked in the paper, and I saw an ad in the Omaha World Herald, alarm sales and installation. I thought, man, that would be exciting. Go somewhere and learn how to install burglar alarms. So I applied for the job. Only when I got there, it was a company called Vanguard of Omaha, and what they did is they sold fire alarms, and they were hiring a salesman, and if you sold something, you installed it. Well, I give it a shot. And I was moderately successful. And in that first year, I made some sales. It wasn't too bad a job. I enjoyed talking to people. That year, I got engaged. A few months later, we got married. We bought a house in Crofton. My boss says, why don't you open up an office in Crofton? You can hire your own guys to work for you. And I said, oh, yeah, I can do that. And we had moderate success. Some weeks I would sell 3 out of 4 times I showed, and the next week I wouldn't sell any. That was a little hard on a young bride. She found a job offer to work at Bogner's. A lot of you don't know what Bogner's is, but the older people do. And she became a cook up at Bogner's, and within about 2 years, she was actually about the head chef at Bogner's Steakhouse. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Bogner's, Bogner's was a steakhouse, and in those days, steakhouses were a big thing because they didn't have Bonanza and Whiskey Creek and all these chains. And Bogner's, on a Saturday night, they would serve up to 1,500 people a night. Big thing. On Monday nights, Kathy was the only cook up there, and she would serve 200 to 250 people by herself, off the menu. Might be frog legs, might be steak, who knows. So Kathy was working at Bogner's, and at that time, I opened up an office in Crofton. I started a campus life club working with high school kids. And then my boss told me he was going to move out to Colorado to open up an office in Denver, and he suggested I move out to Boulder to open up an office there, a branch office. And so I thought, that sounds good. So Kathy and I drove out to Boulder. We found a duplex we liked. We came back home, put our house up for sale, and right away we had someone who was interested in it. And it looked like a done deal because our house had no steps going in it, and this person was wheelchair bound. And so we knew that's what God wanted us to do. And so we packed up everything we owned in boxes, and we wanted to make sure, so he says, well, we were sure, but we wanted God to, support our decision. So we said, God, if you really want us to go to Colorado, have us sell our house by 1 o'clock this Saturday. And Saturday came, and we were sitting on our couch, boxes all around us, packed up. 1 o'clock came and went. And 2 o'clock came and went, and nobody called. To me, that was God saying, I don't want you moving to Colorado. That was tough. What made it really tough is going to church that Wednesday night and having all your friends say, oh, we're so glad. We were praying that God wouldn't let you move to Colorado. I'm saying, how could you do that? That's our life. We had it planned out. It was going to be good. And so I realized God didn't want me selling fire alarms anymore. And I looked in the Crofton Journal and the want ads, and there was one job available, working on a farm. Not just any farm, a pig farm. Talk about being the prodigal son. I was going to Oh. Well, we'll come back to that. We got a couple more songs. Stand up, won't you? I have decided, I called out his name. I'm following Jesus now, and he knows the way. I've made up my mind, I leave it behind. No turning back, no turning back. I'm moving on, not looking back. I'm giving him all that I have. No turning back, no turning back. Though I may wander, I am not lost. So many distractions, but I look to the cross. I've made up my mind, I leave it behind. No turning back, no turning back. I'm moving on, not looking back. I'm giving him all that I have. No turning back, no turning back. You want to come with me? He loves you the same. Oh, won't you come with me? Just call out his name. Say, I have decided, to follow Jesus.
To follow Jesus.
I have decided, I'm following Jesus.
I'm following Jesus. No turning back,
no turning back. I'm moving on, not looking back. I'm giving him all that I have. No turning back, 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 no turning back. I have decided. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. Won't you be seated? Wow, what a turning point. My plan was gone, dead, buried. I'm working in a pig farm. Worked there for 1.5 years. Not only did I have to feed pigs, but this family had a lot of kids. A lot of kids drink a lot of milk, and they didn't want to buy milk all the time, so they bought a milk cow, and I got to milk the milk cow morning and night by hand. Memories, yeah. At least I knew how. After 1.5 years, Kathy's dad told us about a farm that he saw had come up for sale by Wausau, Nebraska. And we thought, hey, if I'm going to be working on a farm, it might as well be our own. And I remember the day that my dad, Kathy's dad, and I were driving out through this pasture by this farm by Wausau. And, you know, I'm starry-eyed thinking, wow, this could be ours. But this farm place, the house was barely livable. The barn was falling down, and it had an old corn crib, and that was it. That didn't matter because that was at the time when Niobrara was moving the town up to the top of the hill, and you could buy a house for $200, and you could move it, and we could live in that. And we thought, this will work out fine, but our dads didn't think it was a good idea, and they eventually got us to go along with their idea of not doing it. Devastated, back to the pig farm. But in a couple of months, after we had said, okay, God, if that's your plan, we're fine, another farm came up for sale. And this farm had a nice little house. It was an old house, but it was very nice. This farm had a nice barn. This farm had a hog barn. This barn had granaries. This barn had a corn crib. It had a chicken house. It had a garage. And God gave that farm to us. Just 80 acres, but it was enough to get started. So we moved to Wausau instead of Colorado. I hate to think of my life if I had never moved to Wausau. I would know nobody in this room. So we moved to Wausau, and I started a campus life club, working with the high school kids. I just loved working with high school kids. Arden Gustafson was in that campus life club, and he agreed to help me build a miniature golf course. We built Pork's Peak Mini Golf up on the hills up there. All cemented out, carpeted. It was the works. And then after not very long, I was asked if I would be willing to lead the High League here at Wausau. And about that time, we started the Charity Singers. God was giving us showers of blessings because we had decided to follow him and not our plan. Well, we weren't able to have children of our own, and that was a lot harder on Kathy than it was on me. You women know how that can be, because she would go to the neighborhood club every month, and she would go to Covenant Women, she would go to Sunday school, and all these other young women talking about their babies and getting pregnant and all this, and it was tough on her. You see, I had my kids. I had the High League. And then God gave us Aaron. Wow, what a blessing. That story is so full of miracles, and if you want to hear about them, you're going to have to talk to Kathy. That's her story, and she loves to tell it. Maybe some Sunday. And I had been leading High League for 20 years when I got my own teenager, and the problem was it was the same time as Y2K, and the world just turned upside down. You know how that was. And I found out that I wasn't an expert at raising teenagers. It was not what I thought. I had all the answers for parents before that. After that, I said, you're on your own, because this ain't, whoa. But it was about that time also when I started to realize not only what it was to be the father of a teenager, but also what it really meant to be a Christian. No light bulb flashed on and, wow, that's what it means. No. Gradually, I became aware of what true Christianity, at least to me, meant. To other people, I'm not saying it's the same, but I want to share my story today. Next week next week might be Dave. But let me know, and I'll work you into the schedule sometime. You can share your story. I had been impressing people all my life with being such a great Christian. I mean, Bible memory, trivia, Bible trivia. And then there's this verse in the Bible, Matthew chapter 5:16, that says, let your light so shine that when people see your good works, they'll glorify God. You see, I'd been letting my light shine so people would see my good works and say, wow, look at Kurt. Isn't he a good Christian? God didn't want that. He wanted them to glorify him. And then in 2011, this gentleman by the name of Kyle Eidelman comes out with this book called Not a Fan. whoa, that thing hits you between the eyes. I realized that the word Christian really shouldn't be used as a noun, but an adjective. You see, I had believed in Jesus. And at 8 years old, I made a decision to accept Christ as my Savior. And then I knew and I believed that once I did that, my destiny was heaven. End of the story. The trouble is, making a decision is sort of like sitting on a fence. Unless you take action, unless you make a change in your position, you're just sitting on this fence. I made a decision. Let me put it this way. When I was in high school, one of my people that I really admired was a guy by the name of Jim Ryan. And he, I think he might have run a 4-minute mile in high school. I'm not sure. I mean, this guy was world-class miler. And I could have made a decision. I am going to be the next Jim Ryan. But if I didn't get out there and put in the miles and run, I made the decision, but there was no change in my position. I didn't take action. It takes more than just a decision. And yet, I look back and boy, I had told a lot of people, all you got to do is make a decision for Christ. You're going to heaven. Again, these are my thoughts. These are not inspired. These are not scripture. Just something for me to think about. You see, I think the word Christian should not be a noun because people say, I'm a Christian. But the definition of Christian is Christ-like. And how can you say, I am a Christ-like? Well, I'm not Christ-like. But if you use it as an adjective, you can say, I am becoming Christian. I am becoming Christ-like. That's my goal each and every day, to become more and more like Christ. Just like back when I was going to Bible camp, I rededicated my life for Christ. Well, that's good. But it's not a one-time deal. We need to be rededicating our life to Christ every single day. We need to stop being a fan, get out of the stands, and get in the game. You see, when Jesus approached the disciples and he said, follow me, he wasn't saying, get in line, let's go. No. Jesus, when he said, follow me, he says, look at what I'm doing and you do the same thing. Walk in my steps. Become like me. For many years, it was all about me. It was to my praise and glory. I'm so thankful that God is patient and forgiving, and he is constantly directing and teaching me what I need to learn. Tomorrow is another day and another lesson for me and for you. And when I look back and see how faithful God has been, how patient he has been, all I can do is say, thank you, Lord. We stand for our closing song.
Jesus, I thank you. And I thank you, Lord. And I thank you, Lord. Thank you for loving and setting me free. Thank you for giving your life just for me. How I thank you. Jesus, I thank you. I gratefully thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
For the benediction, I would like us just to read the verse of that song one more time. Make it your prayer to God for all that you've done. I will thank you. For all that you're going to do, for all that you've promised, for all that you are, is all that has carried me through. Jesus, I thank you.